bit, I wanted people to feel free to share, what they wanted to share. So just for the purposes of Efizi, I just want us to like go back. This is what we're talking about. And I talked about the premise, I talked about my story, and I wanted us to just stop and listen to what this lady said here. I want to take out time and read it slowly. This touched me. Everybody knows Mo Abudu. She's our opera in in Africa. She said, let's take a moment. And this is somebody who almost lives every day. She puts up a picture on Instagram. But listen to what she said. Let's take a moment to remind ourselves that social media is not an accurate reflection of reality. People tend to share their best moments, their successes, and their victories. But rarely do they talk about their struggles or their failures. And inside this green place, that's where the gem is. When we don't talk about this, let me not preempt myself. Let me go. It's important to remember that no one has a perfect life. This is somebody standing in front of Harvard Business School. And we all have our own challenges to overcome. By acknowledging that we are all a work in progress, we can learn to be kinder to ourselves and others. Then she says, let's embrace our imperfections, celebrate and support each other. Even if your data finishes now, right? Even if you decide to leave this webinar, this is a summary. When I saw this quote, I'm like, God, how can somebody just go into my heart and summarize the whole essence of talking about failure from a positive angle? Of course, you're going to get this slide. Now, when we're talking about failure, failure has many dimensions. It can be in a professional life, it can be in a business, it could be in the choice of a life partner, it could be the person we're even with right now, it could be even in the spiritual experience, it could be in our relationship with people. There can be as many dimensions and manifestation of failure if we are to start like tipping or putting down different areas where people can fail. We'll probably have an hour to put in that. But I just try to show that it is evasive, it is diverse, and it can cut across every sphere of life. And so you find yourself being very good at your work, but your family life, it appears you have failed. Remember the question we asked ourselves: is failure final? Is it a journey or a destination? Could it be that somebody just tripped? And who has the right to determine that somebody has failed? Is it you? Is it the society? And then I put a question mark. So sometimes we just sit down and we look at ourselves. Oh, she's such a spiritual person. Very, very, very spiritual. She can pray more than Abraham, right? But she doesn't have a job, or she's not been able to hold down one job. And then we judge the person. Oh, her marriage crashed. Oh, I've seen her with 15 men only in 2023. Oh, but she's a very kind person. So we judge her on this angle. And these are the things that people keep on every day and night. People judge themselves first, and they project the judgment that they have given to themselves, and the society picks it up and helps them to continue the judgment, even though there is no obvious court of law, right? Let's move on. Please follow me carefully. Why do people shy away from discussing failure? Fear of judgment. My father always said that any story that is being told about you, pata, is 1 month. Another story will overtake it. These days now, with the Gen Z on a speed roll, it doesn't even take 90 seconds. Another story has come out. So Mo Abudu said that people shy away from discussing their failures or their struggles because they don't want to be judged. I can give you stories upon stories upon stories of how people have been judged. One of the reasons why I continue to do this webinar is to help us not to be part of the people who judge people with, because you know why? We can never in any situation know the whole picture. It's nearly impossible for you to have the whole picture before you can judge someone. I was talking to somebody yesterday and I said, do you know it's possible to visit somebody who is bereaved without saying a word? You just sit down with the person, just your physical presence. We don't always have to talk, and we don't always have to put a comment. I always tell people, what you comment on social media is a reflection of yourself. It ain't got nothing to do with what is happening there. So if you attend this webinar, one of the things I'm trying to advocate is that let's not be part of people that judge people. Why? Because when we judge people so much, it doesn't allow people to share part of their lives that can even be a blessing to us. If it's not going to be a blessing to us, it can be a blessing to somebody else. Some of us suffer from low self-esteem and we have identity issues. So if I now come and say that this one now happened, okay, now I have told you that I've made 3 mistakes, and I'm sure some of you are like, Stella, I mean, they say you get sense. So how small picking like this go? How can you buy something on internet when somebody, how can you? But it is true. It is. Yeah, because I said why? Because when I'm making financial decisions, when I'm in those days, I would make financial decisions from my heart, not from my head. And I've been beaten more than 6, 7 times. Even something that a 15-year-old girl may have reasoned it. Because I'm reasoning from my heart, I act first before I now remember that, hey, this person they don't whine me. And there are also cultural and societal pressure. And again, people who suffer from low self-esteem, they present an ambience of perfectionism. So because we want to show that we are perfect, and it's such a pressure on our brain to show that we are perfect, knowing full well that we can never be perfect. It's impossible to attain perfection on this earth. But we just want to show that we don't get any issues. The pressure on the brain, now so our brain go just they do like say mechanic, they walk inside it. And when you finish thinking about how they will think, how they will say, how you will say, how they will say, you will not be able to talk. Because you want to present a perfect person. It's a lot of work on the brain. And of course, lack of support. I keep saying it. I think I'm the most privileged person on earth because I have the best support system on earth. Most of you here are my support system. Most of you here. Debbie, please, can you mute? Debbie, can you mute, please? Sorry, let me mute. Let me mute her. Sorry about that. So, so most of you here form part of my support system. So please, on this earth, while we are not meant to be dependent on people, we are to be interdependent on people. If you don't have a support system, today you can start building it, even from here. Even from here. Because when you don't have a support system, I think that's one of the things that makes that's one of the things that exacerbates poor mental well-being. Because when you look at your network, there's nobody you can talk to. There's nobody, at least even if you want to share something, if you don't want to share anywhere you have failed, you can start from that person who you believe that will not judge you. So if you don't have a support system, please, I can volunteer. When after this meeting, call me, let's start to build it. We will do a network analysis and find somewhere. Then, the natural response to failure is that of guilt and dissatisfaction and anxiety and embarrassment. These feelings are very painful, and our first reaction is to push or avoid them. if there's anybody who has never failed at something, maybe you may not understand what I'm talking about, but if you have ever failed at anything, it doesn't matter what it is. This is what happens to our mind or our brain. And if you have been following me since May 2022, when I started these webinars, we've discussed issues around guilt, shame, self-compassion. And these feelings, they are painful. As they are painful to your mind, they have different places in your body where they also cause havoc, starting from your heart, even your stomach, your digestive system. Therefore, what should, and then again, what happens to our brain when we encounter failure and why we should bother? Dr. Lamina is here. Our brain starts producing cortisol. And our brain begins to feel, I'm not safe here, I'm not safe here, I'm not safe here. And according to what Debbie taught me, once your brain starts feeling, I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe, different parts of your body will start shutting down. So why you should bother about what remaining in that place of mourning after you have failed is because the principal function of the brain is to preserve your life. Now, when the brain now starts to feel threatened, there's wahala, even for your brain and your body. So what do I want to say today? I want to share with you examples of people who failed. And when we read their stories, right, we just read their stories and we just read it. But I want us to bring it home. In Africa, typically, people don't typically share their stories. Sorry, let me mute. People don't typically share their stories because of what I've discussed earlier. But all of us know Albert Einstein, who was turned away by many universities. He was even expelled from his first school, right? I don't think anybody, if there's anybody on this call that has suffered from expulsion, you can put it on the chat box. Or maybe our child has suffered from expulsion. This guy was expelled. But everybody knows now how influential Albert Einstein was. This is just a part of his story. Imagine if you were expelled from a school or your child was expelled from a school. This lady was prevented from attending university in Poland and she had to move to France. But she's the one that discovered radium and polonium and her huge contribution to finding treatments of cancer. And in 1911, she won the Nobel Prize in chemistry, but she was prevented from attending university in her home country. Of course, everybody knows about Cosmas, the businessman and founder of Charis, who dropped out of elementary school, got sacked from his job as an automobile apprentice, lost huge money to an importation deal gone bad. You can Google to hear him tell this story. You will weep. But he didn't give up until he became successful. And of course, we all know Mercy Johnson. She once worked as a house help. She failed JAMB before landing in Nollywood, right? Now, so I don't know which part of this thing, these stories I've told, that you can identify with. So let's go back to the chat box before we round up, and then I'll open the mic so that we can talk, because today is not just about me talking. So let's go to the chat box. I've shared some experiences, my personal experience. I also want you to share in the chat box. I've shared my story, right? In the chat box, can you share with us in one or two places where you think that you may have failed and why? It's not just identifying the failure, it's why that failure happened. Like I told you, I will forgive, but I didn't put boundaries. So the whole essence of this conversation is for us to identify the person that says she listens to herself. That is so cool. When you listen to yourself, I think that's one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself. So if you're up to it, let's go to the chat box and let's share. Let's share something. If you are able to reflect, some people can reflect on the spot. Share something that you have. Okay, maybe we should talk. Let's talk. If you want to share one or two experiences where you have failed and now you have been able to reflect, or even not now, before now, you've reflected to see why I failed in this. If you want to do that, you can just put up your hand. I will take 2 people again because of time. I don't want to go beyond 7 before being beyond 9. So let me see if anybody wants to share. Salome. Okay, Salome, take a go. Go ahead.
Okay, so can everyone hear me?
Very well. Yes, we can hear you, my dear.
Okay, so my experience was my 100 level extracurricular. It was supposed to be a language course, and the 2 options were Arabic and French. And as someone who learned French in primary school, secondary school, I was so tired of French. God knows I was so tired of French. I decided Arabic is Arabic now. I'm sure they're going to start from the beginning because, well, they know that it's not everybody that knows this language. And my premonition was correct, but the majority of people that were learning the Arabic were the Hausa people in my university. And they made up 90 something percent of the class. So the Hausa they know and Arabic is actually not far. The basic fundamentals of both languages are not that far apart. So it was very easy for them to just start and just keep going. And the times I was lost, I know I asked questions, but then I really did not put as much effort I know I should have put into it. So I failed the course. I ended up with an F on the course. That was the only subject in my 100 level that I ended up with an F. I had to do a summer lesson on it and take it again. And now looking back, I feel like even the French that I hated, I should have just done the French. Highest I would have gotten a B and it would have ended. But it is a failure, I feel like. Salome, you know what the option was, you walked right into this one. Because my mom can bear me witness. She was in the office with my level advisor when they were like, Salome, just do French now. French is easy A or easy B or easy C. It's something you know you will do it as finished. I was like, no, I want to do Arabic. So before anybody even said anything, I was like, Salome, this was a hole. You walked right into it. You will deal with the consequences. And I dealt with it. And after doing the what's this after doing the summer this thing, I came out with a C. Thankfully I came out with a C. How many people can say they got a C in Arabic? How many people? That is not my first try, but how many people that are not Hausa, that are not Muslim, can they say that they did an Arabic course and they came out with
Really
C?
yourself.
So even in the failure, I was like, I still tried, though I would have loved to not have that failure, but I guess it was something I had to experience to know when I should just go with the flow of everything. Let's just do this easy thing and leave this place. So that was my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, my young barrister. I remember that experience. I was begging this child, please now do friends, do friends. She was doing a dish. And now, but at the end of the day, I even followed to learn the Arabic. It was not funny, but eventually it ended well. And yeah, I don't see any other hand. Salome, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I encourage people to share because
You're welcome.
like I keep saying that if we don't share, people would, people would not learn. In that particular instance, I think she was reacting to the frustration of being forced to do French. So she felt, let me just do something else. All right, Dr. Bie, okay, go ahead. And then after you will continue. Good to have you, doctor. Unmute yourself, doctor.
Hello.
Hello, doctor.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. So I actually posted something in the chat group, right? But I'll just go ahead and say it.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So I mean, I've actually shared this with you, I think. So recently, I had this challenge with my son, right? And then I had to share my own experience with him. I mean, and it just reminded me of how my dad would have felt many years ago when I was in medical school. And I came back home once and told him I wasn't sure I was going to pass my medical exams. So I did medicine because of my dad, right? I never really wanted to do it. It was my dad, right? But I did it because, I mean, I felt I was intelligent. I could do anything. But then in med school, I think I was just not focused. And at some point, you know, I just didn't care. So recently, my son was having challenges in school. And I had to tell him, look, I failed in medical school, but I never felt like a failure. I failed because I didn't give my books the attention they needed. It had nothing to do with my ability. Now, because I put things in perspective, I mean, I knew that it wasn't just about my ability, right? And so for me personally, I like to differentiate failure from failing. Failure is more like giving up and you know, just throwing in the towel. I mean, so you can fail. I read this book. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So failing is actually usually an opportunity to learn and all of that, right? But failure is really a state of the mind, not necessarily what has happened, right? It's just you giving up in your mind. And like you cited the examples of people who failed, right? But then they actually, you know, turn things around. So I prefer to talk about failing rather than failure, because failure is kind of something that is, you know, the end of things, you know, and all of that. So I had the experience of failing, but it turned out well. And fortunately, because I had that experience, I was able to share with my son, and things are turning around for him, you know, positively. I know it's a journey, but I think, like you rightfully said from the beginning, you know, it's good for us to share our stories and all of that, you know, so that people can learn from our experiences and all of that. Yeah. So that's it from me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doctor. And it's I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you. Doctor is actually one of my mentors in this field. Thank you. All right. I want us to watch this small, very short clip that my sister and her friend actually sent this to me. And I'm like, my goodness, this period that I wanted to talk about failure or failing, I've never seen this video, but please just confirm to me in the chat box that you can hear and see what this lady is talking about. Let me just click.
She then asked me, were you born in this country? And I was immediately offended. And I said, yeah, I was born in this country. And then she says, do you have any kids? I said, no, I don't have any kids. She then asked me if I was...
Please, can you confirm that you can hear and see the screen? Can you confirm that you can hear and see what the lady,
Yes,
we can hear, we can hear, we can see.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Married.
Yes,
and then I
ma'am.
said, no, ma'am, I am not married. She says, how old are you? I said 19. May I help you find something? She then says, you are the most beautiful girl I have seen. And I said, oh, thank you. And then she says, I think you could be the next Miss USA. I'm in the Army, okay? We don't do pageants in the Army. She then asked me to meet her at Starbucks the very next day before my next shift at Target. And apparently I was a pretty open-minded 19-year-old because I actually agreed to meet her the very next day. The next day she brought this foot-tall stack of pageant books and proceeds to convince me to enter into a state pageant. So 3 months later, I compete in my first pageant and I lose. I go back the second year, compete in the state pageant. I lose. Go back the third year, compete in the state pageant and lose. Go back to 4th year. Compete in the same pageant and lose. I go back to 5th year, y'all. Compete in the state pageant and lose. But guess what? I go back to 6th year. Guess what happens? I lose. I called her on the phone and said, you told me I could be the next Miss USA. And she says, Deshauna, keep working, don't quit, keep going back. And in June of 2015, she passes away from leukemia. 6 months later, in December 2015, I win Miss District of Columbia, USA. And 6 months after that, in June of 2016, I become the first soldier to win Miss USA. At times, our purpose drops in our laps as if the heavens threw it by accident. I ask only one thing of you all today after you leave this building. Do not fear failure, but please be terrified of regret. Giving up is the birth of regret. After you walk out this door, you will receive 100 doors shut, slam in your face. You will have 100 moments that will be filled with someone telling you no, or telling you, thank you for your application, but we regret to inform you that we've chosen a different candidate for this job. You will sit in 100 different interviews and you will not get the job. The reality of life is that we will all hear more no's than we hear yeses. And we will fail a lot, and I mean a whole lot. But what I ask of you today is to not take no for an answer. Don't be afraid of no's. Be afraid of the possibility of a yes that you have prematurely destroyed because you decided to quit before the clock strikes 12. I love a good no. Please tell me no. Telling me no is like adding fuel to a fire that is now set ablaze because of your single no. So today I challenge you to fight, to work, to not stop here, to believe so heavily in your aspirations that you too will not fear the word no, but instead you will choose to welcome it.
I don't know how many times I listened to this. I don't know how many times I've watched it. I don't know, but you're going to get this. And I encourage you to also share and share it with your children if you have, or with younger people around you, and even older people. So what do we lose when we refuse to identify with our failures? Identifying with failure does not mean mourning over them and sitting there forever, right? We lose a generational body of knowledge, and it perpetuates cycles of mistakes and failures. So people claim that experience is the best teacher. And I say, no. If experience is the best teacher, there are some experiences you may not live to tell the story. I always say that information is a better teacher. So if I share my mistakes or my failures with someone, that person gets a body of knowledge, and that cycle of mistake or failure will either be eliminated or at least reduced. When we refuse to identify with our failures, what we're actually doing is that we are trying to protect ourselves. We are trying to show that I've got it all covered. What if you don't have it all covered? So what? Does it matter? Imagine what they would have said about this lady for all the times she was failing. I'm sure if we were to meet up with her we will go to her Facebook page or Instagram page, I can imagine what the comments people would have made. But she kept on going. And when we also refuse to identify with our failures, the divine comfort we have been promised, which we receive when we fail or when we trip, we lose it because we can't get it, because we refuse to identify with the fact that there's a failure here. And so that's why I asked the question, is failure final? And if we flip these things on this slide, we will be relieved mentally. Remember, the whole essence of this conversation is to ensure that mentally our head space is free from so many things. I think this will be my final slide. I now propose that we should prepare for failure. I didn't say plan for it, prepare for it. How does that happen? When the person who said, I listened to me, said so, I said, you've gone into my slides. Personal reflection to identify the areas and the causes of failure. If you're not able to personally reflect about yourself, according to my father, I think that's I think it's a dangerous place to be in. We must be able to sit back and tell ourselves the truth by ourselves. It's just like somebody see me and says, Stella, yeah. My God, you're looking so slim. Yeah, should actually be modeling right now for like size 12. As if I don't have a mirror in my house. Do you understand what I mean? So when I've told myself the truth, if another person is telling me the truth, there's no problem. I'm already even if I've not started working on it, at least I have identified the areas and the causes. Secondly, understand and appreciate your signature strengths and your personality. I always start from a place of strength. Why? If I already know my signature strengths, which I do know, when I fail, I always remind myself of my signature strength. And if you haven't taken that strength test, I'll put it as part of this slide as I'm sending it, because it helps you know at each point. For instance, if your first signature strength is kindness and you fail in something, when you remember that you're a kind person, you show yourself compassion. If your first signature strength is curiosity, when you fail at something and you remember that I'm curious, I'm a curious person, it shows you how you can use that strength of curiosity to counter the challenge that you face. So it also helps you come out of your silo, read about other successful people, and you will find where they failed. Pick up the gem in it. Be empathetic when you hear of other people's failures or mistakes, and be compassionate to yourself. When you have this kind of mental mode towards yourself, even when you fail, you will be able to get up and continue. Remember, we talked about having a support group. And finally, we have just 2 more minutes. Can I crave your indulgence for just 5 more minutes? There's one other video I want to show you. Is failure final based on the conversations that we've had now? Is it a journey or a destination? Dr. Lamina has clarified what he thinks about failure and failing. Could it be that you just had a slip in your journey, but you've judged yourself a failure? And who declares one a failure? Who does that? If you don't do that for yourself, you have already put the first boundary. So if you identify the reason why you have failed in this particular area and you begin to walk towards it, and somebody is still judging you by that event, it may not have so much impact on you. Why? Because you've learned how to handle failure or failing, and you have even prepared for it. And in any case, you're not the only person that has failed at something. The story of failure is everywhere around us. Finally, this is for next month, because it's still part of, the talking about positive things that are, very difficult in a positive manner, right? So we will be telling you people's stories, right? People's stories and the story behind the glory that people see. I don't want to preempt it, and when we get to that point, we will cross it. But there's one more video I want to show you, and then we will take it. When I saw this video, I almost could not breathe. I've never seen something like this before. It was my sister that shared it. Just pay attention.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you. Nice to be here. This piece I want to share with you is actually.
Thank you, everyone. I think that's the end of the of that, and that actually brings us to the end of today's webinar, and I think I'm just too excited because that particular clip, it was, you know, like when I was getting ready for this webinar, I didn't want to come to this webinar and talk about something that you can easily go and get in Zoom, right? Go and pick something on Google. I always like to bring something that you can take away something at the end of every month, and especially now that we're going towards the end of the year, so that we can have a fantastic headspace as we go into 2024. He's talking about looking pretty. Mamoye, we're talking something serious. So what I want to leave with you, with all of us, including myself, is that failure, that's what I think. I want to ask a question. Please go to the chat box and tell me, is failure or failing, is it a destination or is it a journey? Is failure final, that you failed in something? Is that the end of the world? Let me know from all that we have discussed. Let me know what you think. You know, let me see. Let me see what you have on the chat box. We are closing. I've taken 1 extra minute. Is failure or failing a journey or a destination? Somebody said, Mwogo said, failing is not failure. I just need to introspect. Wow, that's the word. I need to introspect and keep going. Failure occurs when one gives up. Failing just shows me a way that hasn't worked. Oh my G. Failure just shows me a way that hasn't worked. I think that's the mindset that that is required. I can't see, excuse me, I can't see any other chat there, but basically we've come, failure is not an end. It's a process to make us better. Shomi says, failure is not a destination, excuse me, but a journey. Thank you very much. And okay, Maya says, the choice is actually yours to make it. The choice is actually yours to make it. The choice is actually yours to make it. To make it can be anything you want it to be, all right? Dr. Lamina says, failing is a part of a journey. It's an opportunity to learn. Failure is a mindset. Failure is giving up, which makes, okay? Failure is a mindset. Failure is giving up, which makes failure permanent. Wow. Chichi says, failing is a learning curve. Fantastic. Salome says, failing isn't the end of the world. It's a journey that makes me understand that my route is wrong. Jowoke says, failing is never the end. Perseverance is the key. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, everyone. And with that, we come to the end of today's webinar, and I'm so grateful. Definitely, as long as you registered, you're going to get every single thing that I shared here tonight on your email. And please try and follow me on my YouTube channel. Just type Stella Emeka Okobi. You see one small YouTube channel there. And thank you, everyone. God bless you. Have a wonderful evening and see you next month. God bless you and good night. Bye.
Good night. Thank you very much. Bye.
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 Bye.